Hello everyone, welcome back to How We Live Now. I'm going to do a video for you today that discusses how I bolus, or how I calculate Carter's meals, how I bolus for the meals, including considering protein, fat, how I calculate his insulin, how I manipulate that insulin to cover the food that he eats, because obviously it has a different glycemic index and it's digested differently, so the glucose is released differently to if you're just eating standard carbohydrates. I wanted to do this because I've wrote it out quite a few times on our group, Low Carb UK, and I think it might just be nice to have a video that people can share, so you can actually see what I do rather than me just continuously typing it out. Sometimes seeing what people do rather than reading it makes more sense. So I'm going to do a full dinner, just a quick lunch, sorry, with you, and you'll be able to see just exactly what I do, and then hopefully it will help you. Okay, so first things first, I always use a set of scales. I always weigh out Carter's food, so I know exactly what he's having. There's no point in estimating when it takes 2 seconds to weigh something. Estimating can lead to a whole array of other problems. And another thing I do is, Carter's got this book, his little doggy diabetes book, and we write down all his meals and all his blood sugars in it, and we keep a record of everything, as you can see. But in the back, what I have done is I've written down all the foods that he eats, the carbs, protein and fat content per 100 grams of weight. So I can see straight here, chicken breast per 100 grams of weight, it's 31 grams of protein and 4 grams of fat. Obviously there's no carbohydrates in the meat. Broccoli is 7 grams of carbs per 100 grams of weight, 2 grams of protein, 1 grams of fat, and so on. The ones with the little red stars at the side are subject to change per packet, depending on where you buy it from. But it's all still low. Okay, so these are all the foods. I would recommend doing that straight away. It just becomes a lifesaver. There is an app that we use called GlucoCheck, and there's the Carbs and Carbs book, but once you get into this way of life, you'll have certain foods that you eat, and you'll know them off the top of your head by the time you've done it for as long as we have, and we haven't been doing it that long, so it doesn't take long at all. So back to the meal. Sunday dinner. The first thing we do is we decide what time Carter's going to eat, or Carter decides what times he's going to eat. So say for example he's going to eat at 1 PM. He wants to eat at 1 PM. I know that I need to start thinking about his dinner around 12, because the insulin that Carter takes Actrapid, and Actrapid starts working, it peaks around 2 hours to 6 hours. And it starts working between 30 to 40 mins. Most children in the UK will be on Novarapid or Humalog, which is the Lilly's equivalent of the rapid-acting insulin, a rapid-acting insulin, and that works between 20 to 30 minutes, and it peaks around an hour, and it's gone by 2 hours, usually. I'm talking about Carter specifically, that's what I know works for him, but usually as a rule, that's kind of what them insulins do. So I know if I give Carter the meal and I've given him his insulin, he's going to start rising before his insulin's even started working, therefore I think about it before he eats. So I do Carter's blood sugar, and he's just under, and he was 4.2. Now he's alright to eat at that, as long as he's got his insulin in him. I never feed Carter, and never ever let him eat if he's above 5 millimoles, because the higher they go, the more insulin resistant they are, so they become more IR, which is insulin resistant, and what might need 2 units of insulin if he was at 4.2, if he's above 5, might need 2.5 or 3 units. Just see, it's got a lot more to chase, and once the child gets used to and gets into a routine of having steady normal blood sugars, anything above 5 is going to be higher for them, especially 5.5. That's just crazy high to eat at for us now. I'm not saying for you at this point, but what I'm saying is this is what you're going to come to. You're not going to let your child eat above 5 millimoles, because you've got more stability, predictability, normality, at these levels. So it's 4.2, which is great. Oh, so going back to this, if it was above 5.5, I would just pre-bolus him as normal, and then I would wait for the drop. If you have a Dexcom, you can watch the drop coming. Remember that Dexcom's around 7 to 8 minutes behind. If you haven't, then you need to do some more finger pricking, unfortunately. But wait for them to come under 5 before you let them eat. You know, make sure you remember there's around 20% percentage difference with the meter. So wait for them to hit about 4.6. Aim for 4.6. And you know you're alright. So Carter is 4.2, okay? And I want to give him a good pre-bolus, so I'm going to give him a 30-minute pre-bolus. So it's 4.2 at 12:30 p.m. He has his insulin at that point, but I need to work it out, don't I? I don't know how much insulin I'm going to give him yet. So then we decide what he's going to eat. And we've decided, this is what he's decided he's wanted. So first thing on the list, he wants ham. So we get his ham, I've got my scales ready. We get a handful of ham. You can tell we've kind of cheated a little bit and pre-prepared. The scale is set to 0 and they're going to measure in grams, and I plop the ham on, and he's having 76 grams of ham in weight. Okay? So we can put that into his little dish. So I can have a look in the back of my book where I've got everything written down, and I can see that ham has 2 grams of carbs per 100 grams, 21 grams of protein and 6 grams of fat. So I want to initially work out the protein, okay? So I do that by dividing 21 grams, because it's 21 per 100, by 100. It's exactly the same as you'll have been taught in the hospital, guys. And it's 0.21 per 1 gram of weight, and he's having 76. So I times it by 76, and today that means he's having 15.96 grams. I'm going to round that up, obviously, to 16. I've lost my page in the book. Here we are. Right, so protein, he's having 16 grams. And then we're going to do fat next. I'm going to try and put a bookmark in this so I don't have to keep changing hands with my phone. Make it easier for you. Let's stick the lollipop in. There we go. Right. So ham next. Fat next is 6 grams, so 6 divided by 100 is 0.06. We times that by 76, and he's having 4.56. Again, I round it up, so he's having 5 grams of fat. And then we're going to do the carbs, and sometimes you'll do this off the top of your head because you just know it, but he's having 2, so 2 divided by, oops, turn it off, 2 divided by 100 equals, times that by 76, and we've got 1.5, which I'm going to round up to 2. Okay, so that's the ham done. Easy peasy, yeah? Let me just put this bookmark in here. Okay, so then we're going to move on to cucumber. And I'm going to cut him some cucumber off, and we're going to weigh that. And he'll have a decent amount of cucumber because he really likes it. So, cut. Scales are set to 0, and on the cucumber goes, and there's 123 grams of cucumber in weight. 123. Okay, and that's weight. So we're going to do protein, which we know there's none, fat, which is barely in it, and carbs. We're looking for carbs for this because it's got carbs in it. So I look on my list for cucumber. It's there, so it's 4. So we did take 4, we divide it by 100, it equals 0.04, and then we times it by 123, and it says that it's having 5 grams of carbs. Okay, no fat, and a tiny bit of protein, we'd call it 2. It might be 2.5, and that goes into his meal. So we're making up his dinner as we go. He's going to have 3 tiny tomatoes because he likes them and Carter does quite well with them. I know they're on the no-no list. I know some people eat them, some don't. We have that much, 3 at a time. He likes that. There's 22 grams in weight. and I think they're exactly the same as cucumber, which is another reason why I thought they can't be so bad if cucumbers are allowed, and they're not. I know the class is a fruit, but you know, so there's 4 grams per 100, so 4 divided by 100 equals, times that by 22, start again, 4 divided by 100 equals, times that by 22, and it's 0.8, so there's 1 gram of carb tomatoes, and we don't class protein or fat from tomatoes, and they go into his dinner. We always have a handful of spinach with every meal. Almost every single meal I give him a small handful of spinach. You can see there, 16 grams in weight of spinach. And you can have a look. It's 2 grams of carbs per 100 grams. So it's 2 divided by 100 equals 0.92, times it by 15 grams in weight, 0.3, so it's not even a gram of carbs for the spinach. Okay. Some people would class that as 0, some people would class that as 1, depending on if the child's running high or not. I wouldn't class that as anything, and I chuck them leaves in his dinner. Okay, so that's the bulk of his dinner done. What we're going to do now is we're going to look at his pudding. Oh, is he going to have a radish as well? No, we'll leave the radish off because I've not written it on here, so we'll leave the radish off for today. We've got sugar-free jelly. It's got no carbs in it. It's got sweeteners that are polyols, not digested by the gut. Doesn't release any sugar into the system, any carbohydrates, so we don't need to count it as anything. Sugar-free jelly is great. Some people struggle with it because it's got aspartame in. I don't, and I think for the amount that they eat, which is few and far between, as a little treat, it won't hurt anything. But he has this baby with it, double cream, and double cream is a fat. Also got a very small amount of carbs in it as well, and it usually has around 75 ml, and per 100 ml it is 51 grams of fat. So we do exactly the same with the calculator. We do 51 divided by 100, it's 0.51, and then we times it by 75, and he's having 38 grams of fat for the cream. It's also got 2 grams of carbs per 100 ml. So we do 2 divided by 100, and then we times that by 75. So he's having 1.5 or 2 grams of carbs. We'll call it 2 because we didn't put anything down for the spinach. Okay, so then we add it all together, and this is going to be what we're going to give insulin for. So protein is having 16 for the ham and 2 for the cucumber, so not much at all, 18 grams of protein. Okay, fat is having 38 for the cream and 5 for the ham, so we've got 43 there. I could have done it in my head, but I get confused when I'm recording at the same time. And then carbohydrates is having 2 for the ham, 5 for the cucumber, which is 7, 1 for the tomatoes, and we're calling it 2 for the cream because we're counting the spinach. Okay, so 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 grams of carbs. So that's what it's having. Usually carb has a lot more protein than that, and you may come back at me wanting some more, but this is ideal because it's a nice little number for me to play around with you. If we could, for the sake of today's video, we're going to call it 20, 40 and 10. And then that will make my life easier for calculating it with you guys. So now we look at the insulin, and Carter's insulin to carb ratio is 1 to 10. Okay, and I know that from years of doing this, and it's slightly changed a little bit from when they were diagnosed, but it kind of flips around. What are you, darling? 5.0. Nice. Do you want crackles? Okay. So his insulin to carb ratio is 1 to 10, and he's having 1 gram of carbs, so he'd have 1 unit of insulin for that. Now, Carter also has an insulin to protein ratio because we consider protein, and as a rule of thumb, you want to halve your carb ratio for protein. That's going to be a starting point. So, for example, if you're having 10 grams of carbs and you're having 20 grams of protein, we would call that altogether 20 grams of carbs, and that's how you would give insulin for it. I'll try and explain myself a bit better. His insulin to carb ratio is 1 to 10. Today he's having 20 grams of protein. Now, to me, what I'd do is I'd half that, so I'd class that as 10 grams of carbs. So if he was having 40 grams of protein, I'd class it as 20 grams of carbs. I hope I'm making sense. Therefore, because I half it, Carter's insulin to carb ratio is 1 to 10. His insulin to protein ratio is 1 to 20 because it's half. It's actually double the amount he's allowed to eat, which means it's half the amount of what he'd take insulin for. So, his insulin to carb ratio is 1 to 10, so he's having 10 grams of carbs, so he's having 1 unit of insulin for that. He's having 20 grams of protein, and his insulin to protein ratio is 1 to 20, because it's half the carbs, so he's having 1 unit for that. Now, what we also need to consider is that Carter's having 43 grams of protein here. 43 grams of fat, and fat does also digest and get broken down. It slows down the digestion of glucose, so it slows down the process the body goes through that takes the glucose from the protein that they eat. So that process is called gluconeogenesis, and that's the body's way of surviving. That's basic survival. You eat protein, the body is able to convert that protein into glucose to fuel the brain, to fuel the major organs, and obviously they can run on ketones as well, but we still need glucose, and the body's able to create its own. So we're eating a very small amount of carbs, we're eating a decent amount of protein, and we're eating fat. The carbohydrates will break down a lot quicker. Obviously, we're eating low glycemic index carbs. We're not eating rice or sugar or starches, but we're still eating carbs. So they'll be broken down into glucose a lot quicker. The protein, so we eat the meal here, okay? The protein usually starts breaking down around the 2-hour mark. So we'll call that protein. And the fat usually delays things around the 6-hour mark. Insulin takes 2 hours to work, okay? And that's what most children's Novarapid in the UK will take. It will work for 2 hours. It starts working around 20 to 30 minutes and it goes for 2 hours. So they need a small amount of insulin with the meal, and then they need insulin again at the 2-hour point. And this is what I used to do for Carter. So for this meal, I would give him 1 unit of insulin up front with his meal, here, 1 unit. And then at the 2-hour mark, I know that I need to cover this protein, because if I don't, it's going to rise, okay? So I'd give more here, and his insulin to protein ratio is 1 to 20. He's having 20 units, therefore I know here he needs another 1 unit, okay? Now this is where the fat comes into play. If he's had a high fat meal, so he's had lots of butter and cream and fatty meat like belly pork or chicken thighs, he's still going to be breaking down at this point. He's still going to be digesting his food. And obviously we've got a 4-hour mark in there as well, where the insulin's going to have stopped from the 2-hour mark and later on. So, but if you give a lot of insulin at this point, you're going to crash them. They're going to come straight down, because the insulin works a lot quicker than what they break down that fat, and that's why you find that the fat spikes are quite stubborn and quite strong, because you need minute amounts of insulin, 1/4 units, 1/2 units, just to cover the little spike. So what we typically find is that the basal insulin picks up a lot of that for us, and people fine-tune their basal to make sure that they can avoid those spikes. Obviously, if they're eating a heavy meal like belly pork or steak, then they will have to account for that in other ways, like with the insulin. But typically, fat is usually picked up by the basal insulin. So what we do is we cover protein and we cover carbs. So for this meal, Carter's going to take 1 unit of insulin up front to cover his carbs. This is Novarapid, okay? And he's going to take another 1 unit at the 2-hour point. But because he's going to start rising at the 2-hour point and the insulin takes 20 to 30 minutes to work, if I give it at the 2-hour point, I'm going to miss it because it's going to continue to rise like this. What I need to do is I need to give the insulin here. Okay, so the insulin's got a chance to work to stop that so it continues to go flat. If I give the insulin at the 2-hour mark, it's not actually working until the 2.5-hour mark. I need to give the insulin around the 1.5-hour mark, and you will work that out per your child or per yourself by monitoring and testing and eating the same meals repeatedly until you've mastered this. It's quite daunting giving insulin for something that you can't actually see at that point. But you will learn to trust the system. You will learn to know that that spike is coming. Because trust me, once you miss that spike, it's a lot harder to chase it than it is to preempt it. And we're talking about small numbers. You know, the amount of insulin they're taking is such a small amount. You can cover that with 1 or 2 glucose tabs. So if for whatever reason, like Carter does sometimes, occasionally, he just doesn't have the spike for whatever reason, and we don't know why. We can just cover it with a little bit of glucose, and we've not chucked him through the floor. If Carter was having, a typical meal before used to be 2 slices of bread and half a tin of beans. And I know that 2 slices of bread is 40 grams of carbs. I'm not sure about the beans. Let's estimate it and say 60. Okay, they're fast-acting carbs as well. Basically turn sugar in your mouth. So if he was having 40 plus 60, that's 100 grams of carbs, and I would cover that with 10 units of insulin. I wouldn't even consider what happened past the 2-hour mark. I would test his sugars at his meal, let him eat, give him the insulin, and then goodness knows what would happen next. He would usually end up hypo, big time hypo at some point, because those 10 units have to go somewhere. The most Carter takes for a meal now is what? 2 units, 2 to 3 units, and so you've got some wiggle room. Okay, now the insulin we use is Actrapid, and Actrapid works very differently. This is what I was saying about Carter today. It peaks around 2 hours and it continues to work for around 6 hours, so it's perfect for this line here. But Carter does need to take it quite a bit before his meal, whereas the rapid acting insulin only needs 20 to 30 minutes. It can take between 30 minutes and an hour, depending on what food he's eating, or what time of the day it is, or what his blood sugars are as he tests for his meal. So today Carter is 4.2, he's only having a 30-minute pre-bolus because he's at a nice number, and because I know that I can bolus for all that insulin up front, because I don't need to consider this part, because we haven't got Novarapid, we've got Actrapid, and it works all the way along here. I give him all the insulin up front, so I would give Carter 3 units of Actrapid. However, for most children in the UK using Novarapid, if they're on the same insulin to carb ratio as Carter, they would take 1 unit here, 1 unit around the 1.5-hour mark to work at the 2-hour mark, and then the fat, you would have to consider it whether you're going to cover it with a bit of insulin later, because there's a bit there that might take half a unit or a unit, or if the basal insulin is going to pick it up for you, and that's something that you will have to work out yourself. And I recommend doing what I do with this book. I write down all Carter's insulin to carb ratios. I know that for 30 grams of protein, Carter needs 1 unit of Actrapid insulin. For 10 grams of carbs, he needs 1 unit of Actrapid insulin. Excuse me. I know his weight. I write down everything. Look, and we repeat meals very often. For the first 6 days that we had this Actrapid insulin, we had the same dinner. We had chicken thighs and salad, and I wrote things down religiously so I could see at what time it was having a spike or how the insulin was working in him, and then I knew that I was going to get in some predictability. I knew that what insulin I gave him would work in his system. I knew how it would work, I knew how long it would take to work, and I could anticipate things, and I think you know, having that repetition that gives you the predictability. It's the predictability that will change your lives with this, and obviously the law of small numbers as well. So we write everything down. I recommend getting one of these books, any kind of book. Write it in, write things down, measure out your food. It takes 2 minutes. You might come to a point where you can eyeball it eventually, but for now, get the control. Know that you're in charge. You know exactly what that insulin is going to do when you give it, so that when you give it, to apprehend a spike, you give it with confidence instead of thinking, oh my god, I've just given that insulin, I hope they're going to need it. You're going to know that they need that insulin in half an hour, so you're comfortable giving it now. And obviously we've got the law of small numbers, that if for whatever reason they don't have a spike, they've only got 1 unit of insulin in the system instead of 10. Okay. What else did I want to cover? I wanted to cover the pre-bolus, I've done that, and the weight of the food, the carbs, the protein, insulin carb ratio. The delayed bolus, I've done that. The insulin activity time, the delay for fat, repetition, so important. Document everything, so important. Predictability, you will be amazed once you've got the predictability. It hands you everything back. And the biggest one now I want to talk about is underestimation. So while you're doing this, while you're working out this and getting to grips with everything, I highly recommend that you underestimate how much insulin to give. Okay, so if you think they need between 2 and 3 units, go 2, and then the next day up it a little bit if they were high, and the next day up it a little bit if they were high again. Don't overestimate. It's so easy to, because you want the perfect line straight away, and I've done it many times, but trust me, it's far easier to bring down a high than it is to fight lows when the child's got food in the system. Because when they're eating food, the glucose takes longer to work, and if they're going down, you're going to panic. And then you get glucose in them, and then you overtreat it, and they're going to go high, and you're going to just end up in an awful mess. So underestimate it. The law of small numbers, remember, you're not going to be far off. Underestimate it, make changes tomorrow, make changes the next day, write everything down so you can see, so you can have an intelligent or educated guess based on your evidence base. This is your evidence base for your child. Based on your evidence base, then you can make educated decisions, and that will help you moving forward. So I think I've covered everything. I did do a previous video what I've had to delete because I made a couple of mistakes when I was weighing things out, and I sent to be a bit more confident in what I was saying with that one. But I am confident in what I'm saying, I promise you. This is exactly what I do for Carter every single day, and I'm just trying to think as I'm speaking if there's anything that I've missed. If there is, give me a shout. I've wrote a document on this as well, but I wanted to do this video because, like I said, it's sometimes easier to watch how someone does it than to just read. And obviously I wanted to explain the differences in the insulin so you could see how they work differently. I wanted to explain to you about fat, and the glycemic indexes on food, and all the things that you have to consider. But please, if there's anything that you're going to do, it's going to be buy one of these books. Buy a notebook, write down all the foods that you eat, and write down the carbs, protein and fat per 100 grams of weight. And that's your starting point. That becomes then your carbs and calories, doesn't it? Like we used to have when we ate high carb food. And then what I do, as you can see, every day I write down the meal, obviously. I write down what time, my husband's going to do these. When I go back to mine, I write down the time he wants to eat. I write down his blood sugars. So I'm always working backwards from this. I write down the blood sugars at the point that I test him. So I test him at 12:30 because he wants to eat around 1. And then what I do is I work out his dinner. I give him his insulin on a pre-bolus. I work out if I need a pre-bolus or not. Never reached above 5. I've explained about the insulin resistance if he does. To aim for 4.6, watch for the drop, let them eat. Consider the insulin again at the 2-hour mark to give it an hour and a half before. Half an hour to 20 minutes before if you need to. Consider what's going to happen at the 6-hour point if you've had a really fatty meal, if your basal can cover it, or if you need to give more insulin, and ask for Actrapid. If you find that you're giving insulin here with the meal 2 hours later but 20 minutes before, obviously, so an hour and a half, an hour and 40 minutes later, and then you're having to give it again 3 or 4 hours later, and then again 6 hours later, that's a lot of injections for a child. A lot of injections, and I know because I used to do it with Carter, and sometimes I'd have 12 or 13 injections a day just to cover the food. When he's eating that, is eating salad and meat and healthy food compared to beans on toast and chips and burgers and all the other things. Yet we're penalising him by injecting him so much. So how's it fair when they're working so hard to be healthy and eat this healthy food? Ask for this Actrapid. This here, right here, is proof that Actrapid works. Carter takes the insulin here with his meal, and maybe again here at the 6 hour mark if he's had a fatty meal. That's it. Takes 1 injection with his meal instead of 4 or 5. So ask for it. Obviously for people on a pump it's different, and I have absolutely no idea. I've got no interest in pumps. I will try and help you with the meal, weighing out and everything, but as far as bolusing off a pump, I haven't got a clue, and hopefully I won't have to, because Carter doesn't like the idea of a pump either, and as I don't. I'm quite glad about that. So write things down, make a note of the weights of things, repeat things, and take notes. Check the blood sugars an hour after the meal, 20 minutes after the meal, an hour later, an hour later, an hour later. Write them down, and over a few days of doing the same thing, you'll get some repetition, you'll get some predictability. You'll know that, oh, it's 2 hours post meal now, his blood sugars are going to be doing this, we can go and do this. So he wants to go out to play, or he wants something else to eat now. You know that yourself, because you've done it. You've got your own, you've created your own evidence base. No one can argue with that. If they try to ask them to prove you wrong, they won't be able to, because that's your evidence base based on experience of your child. It's real time, it's real data. So do that, okay? And any questions, like I said, let me know. I'm more than happy to help. I just wanted to get this out for new people so that hopefully they'll have a bit of an idea where to go next. And good luck. Okay, bye.